Welcome, everybody. My name is Jordan. I'm an account director at Collogix in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. This is our third episode, if you will, of this webinar series that we've been hosting. So don't worry, you didn't have to catch the first two to know what's going on in this one. They're all a bit unique with a bit of a different focus. From the Ecologics side, we tend to focus on our markets in North America. So today we're going to put a spotlight on Toronto. And then we bring in some of our key partners to also participate in delivering the message as well. So we have Google Cloud and we have OptGuru, a cloud consulting company focused on Google Cloud workloads and migrations. So welcome. Buckle up. We got 75 minutes of action-packed webinar coming at you. We have 5 speakers, and let's introduce them now. So we have Daniel Loren. He's our VP of Engineering and Client Solutions based in Montreal. He's going to talk to you about Ecologics broadly, but also with a spotlight on Toronto. And then you're going to hear from Neil. He's Ecologics head of cloud, and talk to you about our Access Marketplace platform, our virtual marketplace, and how to spin up and automate connectivity to cloud service providers. Next, you're going to hear from Nick and John from Google Cloud. They're going to talk to you about their product capabilities with a spotlight on their Anthos product. And then lastly, you're going to hear from Robin from OpsGuru. He's going to talk to you about once you finally get those workloads migrated over into Google Cloud, how to secure those workloads adequately for your business. Lastly, you're going to hear from me again. I'm going to come back on for a Q&A period at the end of this. And so please hold your questions until the end, and then you'll have the ability to launch those into the chat. And then I will socialize those with the various speakers depending on the topic. And stay to the very end even after that, because we are giving away 2 $100 Amazon gift cards to 2 lucky attendees and participants. So that'll be the agenda for the webinar today. And a little quick introduction about Collogix in case you don't know who we are and what we do. We're an 11-year-old data center company. We operate primarily in North America. We have 40 facilities across 11 different markets, and we really base our infrastructure on 3 different types of facilities: a carrier hotel facility, an enterprise grade data center facility, and then a hyperscale grade facility, and most of which exist in all of our markets that Danielle will touch on next. We have built a very, very dense ecosystem of network providers and cloud service providers across our platform, and you're able to connect to those providers physically in the data centers or now virtually via our Access Marketplace that Neil will talk about shortly as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague Danielle Loren to jump into our Ecologics presentation with a spotlight on Toronto.
Thank you, Jordan. From one coast to the other, from Vancouver to Montreal. This is the technology today. We're all over North America, potentially. Whoops. Someone just slipped out of presentation mode, Kathy. I don't know. This is the reality of live webinars. So as Jordan said, we're in the data center business. We have many facilities. We have a leading presence in Canada. We've got many locations and facilities in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, the main 3 markets in Canada. And as you can also see, we also have a facility from coast to coast in the US. And this is what we have today, but there's already construction project. We've got a big project in Ashburn. We're building a new site in Toronto, in Vancouver. So this keeps growing. We're very aggressively growing in the market we already have presence in, and we're also tackling a new market. So stay tuned for our growth, because there's something new coming coming. All right, Kathy, somehow I can't flip the chart, the slide. Oh, there you go. Control just reappeared. Thanks. Thank you. And Neil is going to next detail that a bit more, but the backbone of our platform is around connectivity. So Neil is going to talk a lot more about the CAM, Collogix Access Marketplace, but behind that is just a way to access a lot of on-ramp with the big cloud provider, including Google. We've got over 600 networks provider that show up at various places and multiple places in our facilities. We've got internet exchanges, and we've got over 20,000 interconnects. So CAM is actually leveraging all of that infrastructure that is already in place. So Neil is gonna give you a bit more detail on that. And somehow it looks like I'm having a hard time flipping from one slide to the other. Caddy, oh, there you go. Thank you. And as Jordan mentioned, we've got physical solution for all size of solution, whether it's 1 rack, 10 racks, or 1,000 racks. We've got what we call our digital edge, which is carrier hotel, site for various enterprise. And we also launched very recently, we were branding our bigger facility that we used to call hyperscale. We're branding that as Ecologics, which is Ecologics is basically new site that we build from the ground up that can host anywhere from 5 megawatt to 50 to 100 megawatt. And the idea is to have the big cloud players show up at our facility, and then we can get access to all of other clients from a closer distance to all the services that these guys are offering. So Ecologics is something that we officially branded and launched this year. We've got already a few of our facilities that are hyperscale size, but we've got a few coming up in the next few months as well. So again, we're still growing our portfolio in various size, and we're still investing in our actual size, because even of our smaller size with carrier hotel are utmost important in our portfolio. So I guess you're gonna have to switch me to the next slide, Caddy. Thank you. And as Jordan said, we're focusing a bit more today on our Toronto market. So this gives you an idea of if you guys, those of you that are familiar with Toronto, you see on the left side the Toronto Airport. We've got 3 facilities downtown: 105, 151 Front, and 905 King. And we also have a partner facility as 105 Clegg, and we're building a new facility right beside that one, which is going to be called Tor 4. So far we've got those 4 facilities. Next slide, please, Kathy. And this gives you an idea for those of you who are familiar. This is the 151 Front. This is Toronto main carrier hotel. We've got a very strong presence in there, and we can offer you connectivity to pretty much every carrier you would think of connecting to. Next slide brings us to Tor 2 and 3, which is two names for our facilities, but in the same building. So this is the 905 King, not too far from the 151, very well connected in between the two as well. So in this facility, again, we can offer you 1 rack, 10 rack, 50 racks, and just tailor to your needs. We also have the next facility in Toronto is, if you want to flip to the next slide, Kathy, is the 105 Clegg is an existing building in which we already have client with a partner of us, and we're building the gray and blue box. This is the latest facilities. We're building 8 megawatt for a major cloud provider as well, is gonna move in there early in 2023. So this is our footprint, more specifically in Toronto. Moving to the next slide. And we're talking about agility today. So from the perspective of brick and mortar, if you want, our physical data center, we still look at it as providing agility to our client, because we already have space. As you can see, we constantly building space. This is a few example of our people just building space and more cages for our client. So because we have available capacity for our customer, you don't have to plan ahead for years ahead and building your facility. You don't have to buy your own generator. You don't have to train support people and operation people. We got all of that for you readily available. So if you need to move in now, in 6 months, in 12 months, grow far faster than you anticipated, we'll offer you the agility to kind of help automate your journey into cloud by giving you the physical infrastructure to set server as needed. And with that, I'll turn this over to Neil, that's going to dig into the automation part of our cloud offering.
All right. So if we want to talk about agility, which is going to be one of our keys here, we've got to talk about automation, right, as a piece of this. What I'm going to do here is tie together two different pieces of the overall story today. So that's taking the on-prem version, which is really going to be the Ecologics facilities. We're going to use it as an example here in the Toronto market, where you'd be able to place the gear that you would need. And then I will be providing a little bit of a story here on the tether, how you would get that to a cloud provider such as Google through a Google Cloud Interconnect service. And then the Google team and the Ops Guru team will help take it from there and help build out a little bit of a bigger story around agility and the speed to market here that we can help you with. So with that, I'm going to jump to this next slide. So Google Cloud with Collogix, talk a little bit about where this is going to be across our catalog. Today, of course, the focus is Toronto. So you see our icon there. We have our 3 going on 4 facilities there, right around that Toronto area that we're going to be increasing with that Google Cloud connection point at 151 Front Street, one of the most connected buildings in Canada. We also have a Google Cloud Interconnect point up in Montreal, another one over in Vancouver here. And then we do have a bit of a line here across the US, which helps us to connect customers that would need similar services there. So what I'm going to show you here in Toronto with a specific example there is going to also apply to our other markets, other locations. It's going to look the same, going to feel the same from the Google side, from our side. Really what you're looking for, though, is getting to Google as quickly as possible. Because if you're going to connect to them and then in through them to a cloud service, you want the least number of hops possible to have not just the lowest latency, but the lowest risk of any type of issue. If you're going to be taking a number of hops to get in through to a facility to then get to Google, that's more equipment that could potentially fail, more fiber that could be cut, more issues that there could be, and you're adding latency between you and the cloud. So the closer you can get to a cloud environment while still maintaining some of that private side infrastructure you may need for a full hybrid cloud deployment, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to keep your numbers low, keep your risk low, be a little bit faster. So what I'm going to be showing you is exactly that. It's going to be a connection from within a Ecologics facility to a Google on-ramp within the same exact building. So all within that Tour 151 Front Street location that Danielle so graciously showed us a few images of there in the Toronto location, so that we're going to keep all of that small, low, quick, and easy here, right? So jumping in, just a little bit more of a definition. There are 2 ways that you can get to cloud today. So you're going to hear this from the cloud providers and other such SaaS, IaaS, and so on providers in the market. Typically, dedicated will mean a direct cross connect. So that's going to be you with a cable straight to, for example, a Google switch. And then they pick it up from there with a direct dedicated port on that dedicated cable to get you at standard port speed. So that port speed, normal today, you're going to see 1 and 10 gig in most locations, 100 gig in some of these more popular locations where you can get a little bit of that larger equipment up there and give you that entire port for your high bandwidth requirements. Now, as with this and your hosted cloud, redundancy is going to be a key as well. You want to make sure that if you're doing production here, especially to meet the SLA guidelines, meet best practice architecture guidelines, you're going to want to be redundant on this. So you'll keep that in mind. You may need 2 cables with 2 cross connects to get to 2 different ports to make sure that you have that redundancy just in case something goes wrong. Because in IT, it can. We all know that, so we're going to try to design against it as much as we can. Now, with that, if we're going to have to run a cable through facilities, multiple suites, get that from your DMARC over to the DMARC of a provider like Google, that could take a few days. Make sure that we can line up all the LOAs, get all of the base details together, get that cable fully run and cross-connected on maybe 2 different paths here for that full redundancy if you need it. On top of then you have your onboarding time to start to bring up your network stack, get your connectivity, get all your peering, everything working end to end, your ports fully opened up, your security policy and everything in place so you can start communicating. So it's good you get that dedicated port, but it's going to take a little while. So this is more of a traditional model that you have out there, or it'll be used for that high bandwidth option if you're a customer that really needs that full 10 gigs all to yourself, or higher, of course, 100 gig in some locations. Now, that hosted cloud interconnection, though, would mean a provider like Ecologics or some of our partners that exist in our data centers as well. We're going to be hosting that NNI all the time. So that's going to be that network to network interface, NNI, network interface. That's going to be us connecting to Google, keeping ports online. So we have a dedicated cloud interconnect port in a way that is up all the time. It's waiting for you and your connection so that when you need it, we can just carve off a bit of that bandwidth. We can segregate it for you with a VLAN and other layer 2 technologies here to make sure you have separate private traffic, but on a shared port in a way at the end, so that we're going to be handing that off to Google with the bandwidth that you need. Because of that, we can provide a wider range of speeds. It doesn't have to be a port speed, but we can go down to 50 megs per second, and then up from there to do 50, 100, and so on. I'll show you a few of those options in just a few minutes. But because this is logical, the infrastructure is there. We are already connected. We have all the cabling, the equipment, the redundancy, everything in place there. As soon as you get to us, we can turn up a circuit in minutes. And because that's coming from you to us as your overall co-location provider, we can even get that initial cross connect up just a little bit faster in that case on our equipment, because it's 2 parties at the table instead of 3 in this case. So it makes it just a little bit simpler. So this is going to be faster, and we're going to automate it in the background. So from that side, just to look at that a little bit, we did start as a company back in 2016, starting to offer dedicated cloud connection to customers. Our network engineering team and our operations engineering team would help get those cables up, get you connected, get you what you need and onboarded. 2017, we started providing a few more of these in a hosted format. So that's where we do these ports that we keep online, we manage through our partnership with Google in their Interconnect Partner Program. And we are going to help carve off that bandwidth for you if and when you need it. And then we're going to help to put that back in the pool when you're done with it. So we can be a little bit more agile with that. But in this case, it was manual at first, but we started to automate. So you see here, 2019, we brought up our platform we call the Access Marketplace here. That is our network exchange. It's what we use to automate that switch connection from end to end. And again, I'll show you that in just a minute. It's going to help you get from your switch through with a private connection configured end to end all the way over to that cloud provider. In this case, Google, we'll keep using as our good example here in market. We then expanded that a bit in 2020, which is interesting because I see on the edge here that we have a question, actually at perfect timing here, that's saying, are these XCs only for cloud? Or are you doing all providers here? And the question is, yes, we are doing providers across our ecosystem. So not only can we do normal cross connects, which have been traditional to the industry, we can provide that to others in our ecosystem that we have like Google and other providers here, but we can also do automated connections in the same way. So we built up this automated switch fabric as part of this network exchange, and we can use that to provision circuits to other providers in the same way that we can help you provide them to Google. Using that same platform, same underlying automation, same infrastructure here, same redundancy and best practice that we built up, we can use that to get to more providers as well to help build that whole story. Because a provider like Google could be a key part of your cloud platform strategy, but you may have other specialty providers that you're going to need, carriers and so on, to help complete your overall story here for your platform and for your IT strategy. So we want to help you get to all of that. So part of our evolution and what we're doing on this platform. Now, for that Google side, we try to keep it simple, as they do too. So I'll walk you through this a little bit. You would log into their partner portal here. You would then create a VLAN attachment in the Google Cloud interface in their portal platform. This is going to help give you an identifier. That VLAN attachment is a unique code that you're going to bring back to us to help us complete this connection in and through to your unique cloud private environment that you've set up with them. So you're going to come to us as your service provider or other providers in our ecosystem. We want to be neutral here as well. So if you have other providers you have a great relationship with, happy to help you work with them as well. But you come in with that VLAN attachment, you plug it into the given portal. That's going to provision that circuit out. Then going to go back to Google's portal to activate that. You want to authorize it as your connection. Just confirm, yes, this is a circuit I wanted. Yes, these are the details. I'm ready for it. I asked for this. So you're going to activate that. And then finally start bringing up the rest of your network stack. So BGP is going to be that next step, because we provide personally a layer 2 service. So that's going to be that layer 2 connection of the stack just underneath your IP and your BGP routing config. So you're going to want to bring up that BGP as the next step to complete that circuit, get your traffic flowing and be able to take things forward. So all much less than a day. And actually most of this we can do in just a few minutes. So what does that look like? Well, here we go. What I'm showing you right here is the Ecologics Portal. This is a video I just captured a few days ago with help from one of my cloud architects I have. So you see here, it is my.ecologics.com. We are in my access marketplace. I'm going to select Google there of the cloud providers that were available. And I'm going to go up and select a single connection here just for the purpose of this demo. I do recommend redundancy, right? For production workloads, especially, you want to keep to that. Now I selected a port that I had up and connected in a Toronto 1 data center, and I'm going to go ahead and plug in that pairing key that I was telling you about, this VLAN attachment pairing key that was provided. So in this case, this is one side for North America Northeast. It came in, we validated that, talked to the Google portal, and they confirmed, yes, that is here. We are waiting for the circuit in this connection. So complete the details of the circuit. So with that, you're going to plug in a name for it, whatever you want. This is fully cosmetic. I'm going to give it a VLAN. That VLAN is going to be between you and Collogix. So how are you going to separate this from your other traffic to other providers, other clouds, or even other Google connections you have? We'll then select our port location just to confirm. In this case, 151 Front Street West is the one I'm going to select, but there were quite a few there, as you saw, across Canada. Then I'm going to pick my speed just to confirm what I need here. I'm going to go for 50 meg for the point of this, but you can see we went in steps all the way up through 10 gig. Which is a default of single tag. And then I'm going to go through and click next to add this to the shopping cart. We're going to see a couple basic details, just everything that I selected here for this demo. I did blur out the name here, but that was it. We come in, confirm that order from the shopping cart, and you can check out with multiple connections at once if you want to bring up a bunch of infrastructure at the same time. But in this case, I'm just going to give this an order for this single GCP Toronto order. Choose my default billing address here if you have multiple, so we know the currency and other details. And we're going to go ahead and submit that order. Submitting it goes in and creates that entire order officially in our system. Then it starts reaching out to our switches to determine which switch is between you and the cloud provider. It's going to then start configuring those, and we see that here. It is provisioning, and we got an email on the bottom right, that email confirming your order, your details, who ordered it, and everything there. Give it another couple seconds here to complete that. Refresh, and there we go. We have an active connection. All of that is completed there, all the way end to end through for that Google Toronto primary circuit. And open up these details, and you can see that right here. So full details of that order, when it was provisioned, who did it, what details, and everything else you need there tied back to that service order. But you have a full, complete, active layer 2 service, and you should start seeing those ARPs on your port immediately as soon as that says it's done. And you can start bringing up your layer 3 traffic from there. All right, there's a little bit here that I'm going to hold on till the end. I'm happy to come back around on some of these other questions at the Q&A at the very end of the session, but we have plenty more to get through here, and I don't want to take too much more time from our other presenters. So with that, we need to take it on to our next step here, and that's going to be handing over to our Google team to talk a little bit more about their Google Cloud Interconnect and Anthos platform. So without further ado, Nick and John, take it away.
All right, thank you, Neil. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending where you're joining us from. My name is Nick DeCristofaro. I'm a customer engineer and network specialist with Google Cloud. And really what that means is I spend a lot of my time discussing with customers on how to build cloud networking architectures inside GCP. So that can include anything from the interconnect perspective, which is what we're really talking about today, as well as all the other networking components that exist within GCP, right? So your VPC designs, load balancers, et cetera, et cetera. So today the focus is going to be on the interconnect component, really how to extend your on-premise network to Google. And I'm going to be really building on to a lot of the topics that Neil's been presenting, specifically on how we do it with Ecologics. So our product from the Google perspective, right, of what Neil just presented is what we call partner interconnect. And really what that is the ability, as you can see from this diagram and what we've just been talking about, extending your on-premise connection, your on-premise network to GCP. And I'll explain a bit of the components here. This is really digging into the specifics of the Google side of how these components are connected. Starting on the right-hand side here of the diagram, we have a facility in Collogix, right, where potentially your workloads are located either within Collogix or either you're extending a connection into Collogix to an on-prem router that you have, right? Then the connection from the on-prem router is effectively establishing a BGP connection to what we call the cloud router within GCP. Now, this is a layer 2 service, as Neil mentioned. So this is essentially extending the connection from the on-prem router all the way to our cloud router in GCP. And what's interesting here is the component here in the middle. The partner interconnect service really provides a partner, such as Collogix in this case, to establish a connection to Google. So effectively, Collogix owns the port that's connected to Google, and then effectively provides that connection back to you as an end customer. So in this case, you would establish a BGP session configuring your router, and then effectively configuring the other end of the cloud router in GCP over that VLAN attachment that you've seen in Neil's presentation and in your portal. The VLAN attachment is that virtual cross connect. So once that's done and the VLAN attachment has been configured, here you can see I have a BGP session with a link local address on both sides. We are using a ASN of 16550, which is the partner interconnect ASN that we support for the service in GCP. And then on-prem, you can use any private ASN or even public ASN actually that you want to establish a connection back to your on-prem network. So the important part that I want to outline here, and Neil touched upon the redundancy aspect, which is very important, but I also want to touch upon what we can do from a global routing perspective with our global network fabric. So in this case here, I have a workload in the Toronto GCP region, North America Northeast 2. Here are a bunch of compute workloads. These can be GKE workloads, Anthos, that my colleague John is going to talk about. And you could have an extension of your Anthos workloads as well on-prem, and you need to establish that connection between the two. So here I have them deployed in Toronto, but I may have additional workloads in, for example, the Montreal region, or even in the Ashburn, Virginia region in US East 4. Now, in this, the way this connection is done, I have established a physical cross connect to my on-prem location in Collogix in Toronto, connected to a Toronto port, and then effectively connecting to the cloud router inside GCP. Now, this cloud router, this connection is established in Toronto. However, I still have access to the other cloud locations here. And we can do that with our concept of global routing or global VPC. So you can actually connect into Toronto, but then have access to any additional regions in our global backbone. This could be in North America, this could be elsewhere around the world. We're able to basically route traffic internally on our network doing that. So that allows you the capability to really extend your network from a single location, creating a DR topology potentially, or even a high availability topology in multiple regions, where you can reach these workloads elsewhere. And I'll talk about another point later on as well, where you can actually directly connect to another region in the same continent. The other thing that's really important is the SLA. So in this case here, I have two zones, right? These are edge availability zones that we call them, or edge availability domains. We have different terminology depending on where you read it from. These two are really important because it provides you that SLA that you need to have in case there's, whenever there's a maintenance activity that occurs, we are only taking down one zone and not the other zone. So you have that redundant circuit, and you need to build at least two from this perspective in a single metropolitan area, i.e. Toronto, to have that SLA. The other thing is the bandwidth subscription. As Neil mentioned, you can select different bandwidth tiers, and we can do that dynamically. So you could go and change the bandwidth tier, and then the provisioning of the bandwidth tier happens automatically, and we change the bandwidth as required for your attachments. So a little bit about the underlying costs from a GCP perspective. So as a customer of Google, what you would see from the Google billing perspective. So two things. The first point here I want to bring up is the dedicated interconnect component. Here we're really talking about the partner interconnect. There's also the ability for a customer to own directly a GCP port, so an entire 10 gig port to GCP. In that case, the customer owns the port, so they're the ones who actually pay for the actual end port. And then you would build these VLAN attachments directly through the Cloud Console in GCP. Now, what we've been talking about here, specifically with a partner interconnect service, again, Ecologics, as a partner to Google in this case, they own the GCP port. So they're effectively reselling that to you as an end customer and reselling a fractional capacity of that port, right? So you as a customer build the VLAN attachments via their portal, which was done in a very nice demo that was presented. You can see how that's very easy and seamless to create. And then the VLAN attachments, these different tiers of bandwidth that you would provision, these VLAN attachments, you effectively would have those build in GCP as well. So depending on the type of bandwidth that you're provisioning, then you're being billed based on an hourly basis, depending on the capacity, how much that is. And the capacities you can see here, you have all the way from 50 to 50 megabits. There's also to 10 gigabits in the Ecologics Portal. There's also different capacities. You can go higher depending on if there's 100 gigabit connections at the facility. The last part that's really being billed from a Google perspective is the egress charges. So one of the big benefits of actually using a private connection such as partner or dedicated interconnect is that you have significantly discounted egress from cloud to on-prem. So for example, our list price for North America is down to 2 cents per gig. So it's significantly less than standard internet egress rates when you're doing a connection through a private interconnect through a dedicated or partner interconnect such as this. Just a couple of more points that I mentioned. So again, this is all done through BGP. For those very familiar with the protocol, right? BGP is what the internet uses to exchange routes. This is done as well between your on-prem router and GCP or cloud router. So we exchange routes dynamically that way. And the VLAN attachment, the point that I brought up loosely earlier was that you saw in the example, you had a connection from Toronto. So a physical workload in Toronto connected in Toronto to a cloud router sitting in Toronto. You don't actually have to do that. In theory, you can actually connect from a workload in Toronto physically through Collogix in a port in Toronto, but then establish the virtual cross connect to actually any other region in North America. So we allow customers to establish a connection, let's say from Toronto to potentially somewhere on the US West Coast if you wanted to. So if you had workloads anywhere else in North America, you could actually directly establish a connection at no extra charge. And we provide that connection to you across our global network fabric. So you're able to route traffic across our network seamlessly without having to build local attachments. You can do that automatically. And I saw there was a question that popped up, but I'll address it at the end because it disappeared off my screen. And for now, I will hand it off to my colleague, John, who will talk to you about Anthos.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. My name is John, and I'm the application modernization lead for Google Cloud's partner engineering team. Sorry, I'm just getting control here. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of Anthos, which is a platform that allows you to run modern applications anywhere. That means running them on-prem in your Collogix data center, in Google Cloud, or even other clouds. A couple things to note before I get started. First, Anthos is not a single product. It's actually a suite of products. I'm not going to go into detail on every component today, but I'm going to briefly highlight some of the core components that I think that makes Anthos kind of what it is. Second, I'm going to try to keep this high level, but I might dive deep every once in a while. The key takeaway should be really the business value that you get from Anthos. So if anyone at your company wants a deeper understanding of the product, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation to connect you with your Google Cloud account team. All right, so every industry is becoming a digital industry, right? Because of the growth of digital devices and software advances. Automobiles are now software driven, right? Receiving regular updates, much like your laptop or your phone. Drug discovery now depends on big data and AI, as well as chemistry. And financial service institutions are now supply chains for digital instruments. So as business innovation becomes increasingly driven by software, over half of all IT spending is going to go towards digital transformation and innovation by 2024. And by 2025, more than 90% of enterprise apps will have AI embedded. So leading organizations will increasingly rely on AI to launch new business models, create more customized customer experiences, and optimize operations to drive down costs. However, some challenges arise as you start to adopt these strategies. Security versus agility. This is a big one, probably something you're dealing with today. Developers want to push code to production quickly, no matter where that infrastructure is. But security teams want to ensure the code is safe. The tools used by the developers are verified and trusted. And this slows down the development process. Reliability versus cost. When people think of reliability, they think of adding redundant machines, data protection tools, and other services that can increase your costs. And lastly, portability versus consistency. When I start to run modern applications across different environments, like my on-prem data center or different clouds, I want that application to be portable, but I also want a consistent experience. My infrastructure teams want to deploy on-prem in Google Cloud or another cloud without having to make significant changes or adopt new tooling. So how does Anthos even help with any of this? So first, I'm going to reiterate, it's not a single product. It's a suite of products that, when bundled together, help solve these challenges I just mentioned. I'll briefly discuss some of these components over the next few slides. But before that, here's a list of some of the benefits Anthos provides. Write once, deploy anywhere. This means the developer doesn't have to build their application differently depending on the environment that it's being deployed into. Consistency across environments. Whether I'm a security professional, an infrastructure admin, a developer, Anthos is going to provide me a consistent set of tooling that I can leverage no matter what environment I'm deploying it to. And as I speak of some of these components, you'll see how the rest of these benefits are achieved. So before I talk about these components, I like to set the stage for who this applies to within your organization. The different components of Anthos provide various benefits depending on your role. So as I talk about each component, you may hear me mention, this is why a security engineer would want this, or this is the value to the infrastructure team. Each one of these individuals in your organization will see great value from one or more of the components that I'm going to talk about. So it's also important to note that most of the Anthos components are built on top of open source products. This helps avoid vendor lock-in, and it allows our apps to be portable across multiple different platforms and environments. Okay, so what is actually Anthos and where can I deploy it? Like I mentioned before, it's a suite of components that helps with things like policy management, cluster management, and so on that can be deployed on-prem, at the edge, or across multiple different clouds. So when I drill down, you can see what are these components, right, that I'm going to discuss briefly over the remaining of my presentation. The components are things like Anthos GKE, Anthos Service Mesh, and a few more that you can see here. Also note, we have deployment options at the bottom for on-premise that can include VMware or bare metal. We also support running in AWS and Azure. And attached clusters on the right means that you can actually connect a non-Google Kubernetes cluster into Anthos to still get that single pane of glass visibility into all my clusters, as well as some additional features and taking advantage of some of the components that I'll talk about. So this is important because let's say you're already running a large OpenShift environment on premise, or maybe you're using EKS and AWS, and you like the idea of Anthos, you want to start using it, but you're not ready to move all of those clusters over just yet. You can still connect them in and receive a lot of the benefits that I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so one of the core components of Anthos is Anthos GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine. But it's important to understand what is GKE and a little of the history behind it. So admittedly, we were late to the cloud game, but when it comes to Kubernetes, we have the most experience and the most mature offering out there. And this is really important, right? It's not a secret that Kubernetes is the de facto standard for container management, but it's also no secret that setting up Kubernetes is pretty difficult and it's cumbersome. Not only that, it becomes even more confusing when you look at things like day two operations, upgrades, monitoring and logging, security operations, and so on. In fact, a lot of customers that try to deploy Kubernetes on their own oftentimes fail because they don't have a good plan for how to handle these day two ops. And that's why having a managed version like GKE is really important. GKE assists our customers to make cluster creation easy. It provides advanced cluster management features like load balancing, auto scaling, auto upgrades and repairs, as well as logging and monitoring. All of this with very little effort from developers or infrastructure teams. Once your code is in a container, you can create a GKE cluster using the Google Cloud command line or our G-Cloud command line interface or the API. It's easy to do so and doesn't require someone with an intimate knowledge of Kubernetes. As I mentioned, Anthos is multiple products, and at the core, we have Anthos GKE, taking the mature enterprise-ready distribution of Kubernetes we provide to GCP customers and bringing it to your own private data center or even across other clouds. Okay, so here's what you see in our console. This shows all of the clusters that you have deployed, including Google Kubernetes Engine running in GCP, some that you have on-prem, and a couple that just say GCP. Those are just open source Kubernetes clusters running on VMs, just to show you that they can be managed by GKE, even though they're not technically a GKE cluster. All right, so let's talk about some of the other services. Another one is Cloud Run. Cloud Run allows you to deploy a serverless platform in Google Cloud or on top of an Anthos environment in your on-prem data center or another cloud. This gives your developers a quick way to deploy their applications without having to worry about any of the infrastructure. The next component I'll mention is Anthos config management. So imagine that you have one team that deploys a Kubernetes cluster. This team has to worry about enforcing policies for that cluster, putting in security guardrails, and things like that shouldn't be that difficult for a single cluster. Well, now imagine that team goes around telling everyone how amazing Kubernetes is. So another team starts to use it, then another team, and now you have clusters running across your entire company. Some are on-prem, some in Google Cloud, some maybe in another cloud. Or even if they're in the same type of environment, right? Think of a fast food restaurant that runs Kubernetes in each store to handle things like inventory, point of sale, and other things across 500 or 1,000 stores. In scenarios like this, how do I ensure that the policies I set are enforced? How do I ensure that an IT admin doesn't make a change to a cluster that's running in one of these stores or in my data center? Well, the answer is config management. Config management allows you to define and enforce policies across Kubernetes deployments. You have a central Git repository that manages access control policies like RBAC, resource quotas, and namespaces, both on-premise and in the cloud. Config management is declarative, so it's continually checking cluster state, and it's applying the desired state to enforce policies. Config management also puts security guardrails in place. So as an admin, I need to create a consistent environment that offers security by default for my developers. I can now deploy new environments quickly with confidence that the desired cluster configurations have been applied. Config management helps maintain control over cluster sprawl, as I mentioned earlier, as well as when more teams adopt Kubernetes or grow their environments for redundancy or expand to new geos, or for whatever reason, you're increasing the overhead in managing separate configurations. Config management solves all of this by delivering a single centralized place for multi-cluster management. All right, so next up is Anthos Service Mesh, which is our managed Istio solution. If you're not familiar with a service mesh, don't worry. All you need to know is that a service mesh automates a lot of functionality into your network. A lot of the benefits are things that a developer would typically have to code into their application. But with Anthos Service Mesh, or ASM, the developer doesn't have to worry about any of these. The main three things I like to highlight when talking about a service mesh is observability, operational agility, and policy-driven security. With observability, ASM monitors things like error rates, latency, saturation, and traffic right out of the box, allowing you to create SLOs based on those metrics. It also builds a topology graph in the console, so you can see which services are communicating to each other. The second thing is operational agility. When deploying an application, developers often need to account for things like what happens when one service fails, and whether or not that's going to impact my other services. Or how do I handle routing between different applications? What if I have an application running on-prem in my Collogix data center, and I want to start sending traffic to the cloud as part of a Canary rollout? ASM does all of this without developers having to modify their code or make any changes. And finally, policy-driven security. ASM handles certificate management as well as authorization and authentication between my services. It's also going to let you encrypt your traffic using MTLS. So I mentioned earlier at the very beginning that businesses are relying more and more on AI and embedding AI and ML into new applications. So Google has a large suite of AI and ML products and services, including pre-trained models, which help IT teams quickly take advantage of capabilities of AI without having a huge team of data scientists. So we have the ability to deploy some of our AI tooling and pre-trained models to your on-premise data center. So if you're running Anthos and you have large data sets on-prem that aren't ready for the cloud, no worries, we can still help. We can still take advantage of some of the machine learning and AI models. We offer a tool as well to help you get started. I'm not going to go into a ton of details on this, but if you're running VMware on-premise or virtual machines in another cloud like EC2 and AWS, or even GCE and GCP, we can actually migrate those VMs from a VM directly into a container running in GKE. So that's going to make your life a lot easier when you start to adopt some of these modern applications in the modern infrastructure. So I'm going to finish by mentioning no matter where you are in your modernization journey, we can help, right? If you're already containerized, that's easy. You can deploy applications straight into Anthos on GCP, on cloud, or in your Ecologic data center. If you're primarily using virtual machines or legacy software right now, there's also a path to modernization with the migrate tool I just mentioned. But more importantly, we like to work with services companies like OpsGuru to help our customers along this journey. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Robin from OpsGuru to talk about this a little bit more.
Thanks, John. Just waiting to grab control here. All right, looks like I've got it. So thanks again, John. As John mentioned, I'm CTO and co-founder of OpsGuru. OpsGuru was founded in 2017. We're based out of Vancouver, Canada, and we have over 100 engineers spread across the globe, primarily in North America and EMEA, with a deep technical skill set in hybrid and multi-cloud. OpsGuru was acquired by Carbon60 early last year, and together they've given us the ability to really support our customers end to end on their cloud journeys, from adoption through managed services, as we bring customers into the sort of the hybrid cloud world. Oh. I think the controls are, here we go. As I mentioned, OpsGuru does help customers end to end as they're either onboarding into cloud or looking to further optimize and expand their existing cloud footprint. We'll go into some specific examples of how we help and some of the offerings we provide shortly. But as you can see here, we really take customers from that adoption stage, if they're just looking to get into cloud and help their organizations build the expertise internally to know how to take advantage of cloud offerings, moving into things like app modernization, whether that's with serverless or Kubernetes, and further optimizing on either costs or efficiency of their applications themselves. Throughout that journey, we're really focused on ensuring that best practices are enforced through the required controls and capabilities that the cloud offerings provide. So this talk, we're going to spend the next few minutes looking at how hybrid cloud and hybridizing workloads with the support of something like a partner interconnect really can add to the security capabilities and the general governance that you have over the on-prem workloads that you may already have. So first, looking at just in general what hybrid cloud enables. Typically, there's the integration of cloud services, obviously, where your on-prem workloads now have a whole host of cloud services to take advantage of, whether that's cloud storage or varying database models or AI platforms, all packaged up by the cloud providers, by Google Cloud, that allow your teams to quickly and efficiently experiment and adopt these technologies. It also adds flexibility in how workloads are hosted, where they're hosted within, whether it's with cloud or in on-prem environments, with that connectivity up to your cloud environment. As John mentioned, with Anthos and GKE on-prem, you have a massive amount of power in how you locate workloads and provide that uniform platform for them to operate on. Aside from that, platforms themselves and runtime models, again, whether it's on Kubernetes or serverless, or you're using something like an app engine, being able to integrate all these options together with your on-prem requirements is another advantage. But the key that we'll be talking about in this talk is really how we can enhance security of hybrid workloads using what's available in Google Cloud to benefit what's actually running on-prem. Three of the technologies that we'll be talking about are obviously Partner Interconnect, which we've covered pretty completely so far, but also Google Private Access and how we can enable workloads with private IPs to still access the services and APIs in Google Cloud that they require, as well as VPC Service Controls, which allow us to create a perimeter to prevent egress, exfiltration of data and add an extra level of security onto particularly data-intensive applications. Since we've already covered Interconnect pretty thoroughly, I'll dive into the other two quickly before we go into a specific example here. So starting with VPC Service Controls, this is a capability of Google Cloud to define a service perimeter around APIs and Google services, as well as workloads that really prevent anything outside of that perimeter from accessing the data through those APIs, and likewise from preventing workloads from calling out to anything outside of that perimeter without an explicit exception to it prevents them from further accessing data outside of the perimeter. In this example, you can see a perimeter is defined around cloud storage, particularly a cloud storage bucket here is part of that perimeter. What's really powerful is this can be extended, that perimeter gets extended to include networks connected via Partner Interconnect. And so in this case, we have workloads running in an on-prem Kubernetes platform, say with Anthos GKE on-prem, and those workloads are able to access the data in this cloud storage bucket that's in the service perimeter, but not external to that service perimeter. And likewise, anything outside of that perimeter is unable to access the storage bucket itself. So what we get is if somebody happened to get credentials to that storage bucket, if they're not running on the network that has access within that service perimeter, they're not going to be able to access the bucket. And similarly, if for somehow a workload is compromised within that network, it's not able to call out, even though it has access to a cloud storage bucket. It's not able to reach any buckets that aren't part of that service perimeter. So you can see in both directions, we're getting some protection against exfiltration of data in this case. So it's a very powerful feature to have available. On top of the service controls, private Google access is another key piece when we're talking about hybrid environments. Again, this allows workloads running on-prem to access Google APIs and services without having a public IP, so without transiting the public internet. So while keeping that traffic local to the partner network and Google network, it allows us to remain within those service perimeters to ensure that, again, we're protected from that exfiltration risk. Putting this all together, we do have a blog post going out today that elaborates on this a bit, but essentially in this example, we would have a workload running in GKE on-prem. That workload is using the Google's Vision API to do optical character recognition on data sets stored in cloud storage. So you can see, say within the Collogix data center, we have GKE on-prem, and the connectivity is configured through Partner Interconnect with private Google access to use these private IPs. And all of this would be residing within a service perimeter defined with VPC Service Controls. So what we get is these on-prem workloads actually don't even need direct access, given the way that the Vision API works, to raw data. Though if they required it, they could have it. We're still protected in the egress sense, but we can really lock it down and just allow access to the Vision API from on-prem workloads, given that as long as we know the location of the data that it needs to operate on cloud store, where it exists in cloud storage. So with this setup, the on-prem workloads ultimately just get the output of the Vision API without having to expose the raw data unnecessarily. So that's one example of the sorts of benefits that you can get by combining the cloud providers, Google Cloud Services, with on-prem workloads. Whether you're looking to build up those services from scratch, or like I said previously, if you're looking to further optimize and build out what you already have, one of our more popular products and offerings at OpsGuru is our Cloud Launchpad for hybrid and multi-cloud. And what Cloud Launchpad does is it combines a set of workshops along with tooling to rapidly deploy cloud environments with hybrid connectivity based on the specific goals and the specific needs of on-prem workloads, to provide that connectivity up into Google Cloud via Partner Interconnect or VPN to quickly get our customers up and running and be able to provide these best practice secured environments for them to start building out their platforms in. A typical deployment of Cloud Launchpad would look something like this. I know the details are fairly small, but it's essentially building out a set of resource hierarchies based on organizational needs. These can either be structured based on line of business or development lifecycle workflow, having a prod dev staging environment, as well as having things like security escrow accounts and organizational policies, and then the hybrid connectivity built in with appropriate firewalling rules and network restrictions based on compliance needs. So if this is the type of project that your organization may be looking at, or if you're needing further assistance with building out and taking advantage of hybrid cloud, I'd be happy to discuss either directly or make an introduction to our sales team using the contact info that we'll be sharing out a little later. Thanks, everyone.
All right. That was fantastic. Thank you to all of our speakers. I'll give everyone a minute to catch their breath. That was a gauntlet of content that we were just ran through by everyone. Kudos to our speakers for absolutely nailing your presentations. We are 1 minute ahead of schedule. So thank you for keeping to that. We hope everyone enjoyed that. We're going to have a short question and answer period. We still have 15 minutes left in the webinar. And then at the very end, if you stick around, we have 2 Amazon gift cards to give away. They've been randomly drawn by whoever has been in attendance today. So if you have any questions and answers, please launch them into the chat or the Q&A. There were a couple that came through which didn't get answered, so we can start there. I believe they were both for Neil on Neil's presentation. Neil, the first one was, is there any security to the VLAN traffic?
Yeah, and I think I can tie that into the second question there, which is it GMPLS on your side?
Yes.
They came on as second. So both of those kind of are tied into the same answer here. And I'll do my best here from a management side. I am a former network engineer. It's been quite a number of years for me though. Of course, I'll caveat this a little bit, but the Ecologics Access Marketplace, so it's an encapsulated Ethernet transport service. It is on private infrastructure here, so it is not an MPLS service, or it's not a GMPLS managed service. We actually here use a VXLAN EVPN CLOS leaf and spine fabric, if you're interested in some of the technology and a little bit about how we're constructed. But we use a combination of those technologies for the separation, the privacy, and the security of the customer traffic as it travels through our infrastructure. Now, with that, I want to caveat, we don't encrypt today on that traffic, but the way that we are architected and what we have allows our customers to encrypt before they enter our transport and then decrypt on the other side after with some of the cloud provider services that they could potentially be using there. Though we are looking actually from a roadmap perspective at providing that end-to-end encryption through our network. That's something I'm hoping to get launched a little bit later this year, but we're working on as an addition to our platform that we'd be able to provide that filtering and other security technologies to help provide customers. And of course, we're always looking for feedback of what's important to our customers as well, and what we can do there. But if you have concerns, need more information, then of course, I want to put the plug for our sales team. If you want to reach out, they can help connect you with our solutions architects as well, talk through what location you're in, what you're looking for, what some of your needs may be in that space. And similarly, of course, Ops Guru and Carbon 60 are experts in this space too. And they can help talk you through what other technologies you can help layer on to provide a complete end-to-end solution here that you may need. And I think I can loop that around too. There was another question here.
Yeah.
Was it, are there ISPs selling layer 2 access?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So to jump into that while I've got the microphone before Jordan takes it away from me. Yeah, we do have a number of carriers and service providers that are both Google Interconnect partners and other cloud connection partners as well, or they do resell through our marketplace with that so that they can provide transport to and outside our facilities. But we're a data center company, right? So we manage the space, power, and interconnection in our facilities. We're not a carrier, so we want to provide our carriers with some room for there, the service providers, resellers, and others. We have hundreds actually through our ecosystem, and really who's going to be available is going to depend on the market and the location that you're in. So I think the best bet there for us to help you find the right partner who can serve what you need to and help you backhaul this is going to be our sales team and or a good trusted solutions provider and advisor like Ops Guru and Carbon 60. So we have some of those who would be able to help get you lists of people in market, local, that would be able to help you through your solution given the facility you're in and what you need there.
Nailed it, Neil. Thank you for taking that on. There's, while I have you, I'll launch one to you because this is one that I often get from our customers. Okay. And usually I'd probably just call you to get the answer. But you know, if a customer can now turn up hosted circuits to clouds via our virtual marketplace, why would they choose a standard cross connect and wait days or longer to have that turned up instead? That's something I typically get from our customers and prospects. How would you answer?
Yeah. I know I've heard that a couple times too. So it's interesting that they both come for slightly different purposes. Typically the price point is about the same for what you're looking for there. There might be a little bit of deviation in there, but the bigger thing is going to be the bandwidth and your need. So a dedicated interconnect is going to be at a port speed, right? So you're going to have that 1 gig, your 10 gig, and in some locations where there are the interfaces for it, 100 gig connection. Now, you're going to have that entire port for yourself, for your own usage. So if you are in that higher bandwidth category, you really need that. And especially if you're in the same location as that on-ramp, that's going to be pretty easy to do because it could just be a cross-connect in building. And so I have seen customers do that when they're not in a rush. They don't need that dynamic connection from the hosted side. And really, they're on that higher end of the bandwidth spectrum where they really need that dedicated 10 gigs just for them all the time. Now that hosted connection, the one we showed today, where you can spin it up in a few minutes, that's a bit more agile. So that allows you to create and destroy in a few minutes. So you can work with some more burstable use cases that you may have. There's the ability to edit and upgrade on some platforms with that as well. So you can make small changes to that as you need to over time. You have more speed options available to you because you're just getting a fractional piece of that port. So it gives some lower price points because of course you're going to be paying less for a 100 meg connection than you would for a 1 gig or a 10 gig on that because you're needing less bandwidth and less infrastructure to support. So there are definitely benefits to that side, to having that agility, the speed, a few more options to that on the hosted. But for those who know you have a static project, it's going to be long term. You're going to need that higher speed. And you're going to be right in the same data center, so you don't need Ethernet transport around the city or between facilities to get you to the on-ramp. You're just right there. It's a single cross connect. There's no metro connect or other thing needed. Then yeah, that cross connect could be a great purpose. So typically I see that in the redundant 10 gig and redundant 100 gig range for customers.
Fantastic, thank you. And I mean, with the platform growing the way that it is, the demand for the services and these types of requests has continued to accelerate this year.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think we have any more questions teed up. So we're going to pick the winners of our Amazon gift cards. Drum roll, please. I have them here. The two winners are Adolfo Perez and Brian Nickerson. Congratulations. You are the lucky winners of our Amazon gift card. If I won, I would probably stock up on diapers because that's typically what I buy on Amazon, but you are free to use it and spend it however you'd like. Congratulations to our winners. And that really brings a conclusion to our series. This is number 3 of 5. So we have 2 more of these coming later this year. We'll keep you posted on when those come out. And we will be sending out a recording of this to all of the attendees. So if you want to go back and see some more of the content that that the speakers have shared today, then you can go do that. And the speakers have also generously provided their contact information here. So take down their emails if you want to reach out directly and ask them a question or set up a call. I'm sure they'll happily connect you with the various resources. As you could tell from the quality of the content today, these are true experts and specialists in their field. And together we have such a great marriage of solutions that we can put together and really do an end-to-end solution for our customers. So thank you very, very much for attending. We look forward to welcoming you back on our next session. Take care.